We have received a resignation, a letter from Officer Kim Porter. And in addition to that, we have also received a letter of resignation from the police chief.
You just heard from the Brooklyn Center, Minnesota mayor, who of course announced the resignation of the cop who shot and killed 20-year-old Daunte Wright, allegedly by accident. Now that person has resigned, and so has the department's police chief. That was the person who let us all know yesterday that the shooting was an accidental shooting, and that the officer who opened fire accidentally did so, thinking that the device in her hand was not a gun, but rather a taser. I want to remind you all of that moment. Let's take a quick look.
As you can hear, the officer, while struggling with Mr. Wright, shouts "taser, taser" several times. That is part of the officer's training prior to deploying a taser, which is a less lethal device. That is done to make her partners aware, as well as the subject, that a taser deployment will be imminent. During this encounter, however, the officer drew their handgun instead of their taser. For informational purposes, we train with our handguns on our dominant side and our taser on our weak side. So if you're right-handed, you carry your firearm on your right side and you carry your taser on the left. This is done purposefully and is trained. As I watch the video and listen to the officer's commands, it is my belief that the officer had the intention to deploy their taser, but instead shot Mr. Wright with a single bullet. This appears to me, from what I viewed and the officer's reaction and distress immediately after, that this was an accidental discharge.
Now, that was Police Chief Gannon. He is also the person who resigned along with the cop who opened fire. And making a mistake like that, I mean, maybe you can make a case if we're talking about a rookie cop, someone who just got hired, someone who's young and inexperienced. I mean, I wouldn't make excuses for that person. It would still be a horrendous, terrible thing to do. But in this case, we're not talking about a rookie cop. We're talking about Kim Porter, who's a 26-year department veteran. And she has been identified as the officer who fatally shot Wright during a traffic stop on Sunday afternoon. Her union announced her resignation. Now, Porter had previously been suspended awaiting the results of an investigation, but she had decided to step down before that investigation concluded. And I should also note that she was in the process of training an officer when she made that mistake in using her gun as opposed to her taser and shooting Wright once in the chest, which ultimately led to his death. Waz, I wanted you to jump in and share some of your thoughts of what happened.
Yeah, it's tough, right? Like, this police chief, it's his job basically to come out no matter what and defend his officers. That's what the people he works with expects of him. That's what he's been taught a cop is supposed to do basically from day one on the job, is that you go out and you protect your fellow officers from scrutiny, from punishment, from all of that, right? Now, the officer who has finally resigned after 26 years on the job, we don't know the circumstances of, your pension, et cetera, after leaving the force. Most police departments, if you do 25 years, you can pretty much start collecting on your pension. It's just, I don't know, it's just the need to come out and unabashedly defend these actions just strikes me as odd, right? Like, I don't understand why we can't just let the investigation actually play out and not let the person's chief come out and basically play lawyer for her on TV. I don't understand why that needs to be the process, right? We could say that person's on, administrative leave, whatever. We're gonna conduct a very thorough investigation as to what the events were, and we'll get back to you when it's done. And this guy comes out, he essentially defends all of her actions, which I don't understand how that can be the process when something this fatal happens. This isn't some minor situation, right? Like, she didn't just crash a squad car where it's like, all right, this is gonna cost the city money, but we can't figure it out. She killed a young man. Like, this guy's gone now. So you can't come out and just casually defend what happened as it was, it was just a mistake. Just a mistake. We all make mistakes, guys. Come on, she just messed up there. Like, that can't be how this works. But, the response has been so swift. And I think in the past, I don't think you could have expected the cops to sort of, like a police chief, to step down behind something like this. This is new. I don't know that it's gonna ultimately lead to better outcomes for all of us, but this is certainly a departure what we normally see from police in these situations.
My read of it is that the demonstrations that took place following the shooting of Daunte Wright basically persuaded Kim Potter to step down, but also for the police chief to step down. And you're right. I mean, it is also kind of interesting because in the process of trying to defend her, he disclosed something that just makes the entire department look laughable, right? I mean, how do you mistake a taser, or I'm sorry, a gun for a taser, especially if you're a 26-year veteran with that department? And look, I don't know. There should still be an investigation. My understanding is that the investigation will move forward because you're right, this is not a small thing. We're talking about someone's life being taken when it really didn't need to happen. And I also want to provide some more detail about what led to the traffic stop to begin with. Yesterday, when we initially covered this story, it was believed that it had to do with dangling air fresheners, allegedly obstructing the driver's view. But the police department is saying something completely different now. Apparently, it had to do with expired registration tags, but that's still alleged. I don't know if that's actually true, but that is what they're alleging. And just to reiterate, Potter was acting as a field training officer and was training a new officer when this incident unfolded. So I'm sure if Cenk was here, he would talk about the training and how much of a problem it is. And it is a problem. But I also don't think that training is the one and only problem with policing in America. I think that they're overly militarized. They have. Look, you and I, Waz, are in favor of unions protecting workers. There's no question. Sure. But the police union has certainly gone above and beyond in terms of defending any and all actions taken by police, even when there's evidence of excessive force, even when there's evidence of cops literally shooting unarmed people in the back as they're running away. And that is not using a lethal weapon when someone poses an imminent threat. That's using a weapon to retaliate against someone because you don't like the fact that they're running away from you. And this mistake was lethal for Daunte Wright. But I also want to remind you all that after he was shot in the chest, the vehicle proceeded to travel for several more blocks until hitting another car. Luckily, no one in that other car was injured, but it could have ended even worse than what we're seeing now. And obviously, the story is already enough of a tragedy. So those are the updates that we have for you. And I do think that the demonstrations persuaded the chief and this officer to step down. And I think that's the right way to go. I just don't know, as you mentioned, Waz, how much of a difference this is really gonna make when it comes to policing in that particular area, or policing across the country for that matter.
I don't wanna be that person that says I'm numb to it or whatever. It's like, what more is there to say, about this? Like, it's so obviously a heinous act by somebody whose job it is to protect the citizenry. And it's frustrating. We're all tired of it. And what's it gonna take for this culture of just overly aggressive and ultimately destructive police behavior? When is it gonna end?
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.